You know, I never quite understood how they choose the Pokemon for the front of these packs sometimes, because Garchomp only has a level X, Hippowdon only has a rare, Darkrai does have a holo, but his set was last time round, so not really sure what's going on with that. Also, not even sure, is this supposed to be Empoleon? I think it's meant to be Empoleon, right, because you got the claw there. That's also only a rare. Anyway, hey guys, this is GameCow, welcome to another Pokemon TCG history video, this time on Majestic Dawn, final set of the 2008 World Championship format. Which means there's going to be more stuff to come as well. We are going to have the... we're going to do 2 weeks of this actually, because, well, this is when Lost Origin and the real life thing is releasing, and Pepper's got a lot of work to do next week. So we're going to do one round with our bans in place, so stuff like Magmortar, etc. will not be playable, and no Gardevoir, etc. and all of that fun stuff as well. And then we're going to do one which is whatever the hell we want, so probably will just be Plox mirrors again, but you know what? There's plenty of decks that can still beat it too, so I think it'll be fine. We'll show what the actual meta was like, I suppose. I don't know, maybe we'll show Jason's winning list, because that is available. We'll just have to see. Anyway, Majestic Dawn is actually a really exciting set. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. And, well, it's a personal good one for me, because the EVs are pretty prominent in here. And that includes level X's for Glaceon and Leafeon. No Jolteon level X, though, sadly. It's a really good normal card, though. We'll talk about that in a bit. But, yeah, Leafeon and Glaceon get new stuff, like obviously this is the first time they've been printed in the TCG, so this set focuses a lot on them. They've got a rare and a holo printing. We're only ever going to see the holo though, because the rares aren't that amazing. And yeah, the level X's are super cool, we'll get into them in a bit. There's also a little bit of nostalgia for me, even though I've never seen this set beforehand, because the legendary birds actually have coming into play powers which are very akin to what the, at least Articuno is just exactly what the Game Boy games Articuno did. When you put it into play, it just paralyzes on a coin flip, which is great. I don't know, just, it's neat. There are a couple of really awesome powers that way that we'll get into. So yeah, kind of a little bit of a throwback as well. So yeah. First off, we'll go over the trainers though, because man oh man, yeah, trainers and energy, there's a couple of bits in here to go into with that. So we get a bunch of reprints in here as well, Dual Ball, Dust Ball even, Energy Restore, Pokeball gets a print, it's a really nice artwork too. This set's got a couple of good ones that way. Quick Ball gets a print, although it's not out of format yet anyway, so who really cares? That's useful for later on, I suppose. Then we've got Energy Search getting its very unique printing. I don't think there's ever been one like this otherwise. Darkness and Metal Energy get a print here. Health Energy and Recover Energy are basically Potion Energy and Full Heal Energy respectively, just with different names. These are not useful for this exact round because Heal Energy would just be played instead because it's a combination of these two, but after this set, Heal Energy rotates, so if you do need that little bit of recovery and you don't care about your energy cost being for colors, Health Energy could be used. Likewise, Recover Energy might be a thing. Honestly, we're going to have better options, so we're probably never seeing them, but it's worth noting anyway. And then the other gigantic energy in here that is actually a game changer for a ton of different decks is Call Energy. So this is one of the main reasons why Pachirisu is not known as well as Dunsparce ever was, because Call Energy is kind of your Pachirisu replacement. It is only a colorless energy, but if Call Energy is on your active Pokemon, you search your deck for up to 2 basics, bench them, and then end your turn. So it functionally serves as a setup attack on the first turn of the game where you might not have setup attacks otherwise. Really strong card. Also gives you the energy that you need for next turn, so you can evolve up and do all the fun stuff. Really cool idea. Definitely appreciate this card, and we will see a lot of it between different decks. It is a special energy though, obviously, so there are punishes for that. There's actually a really good punish in this exact set, but still, it is well worth noting.
Otherwise, we clearly have the strongest supporter card ever. Oh, I guess we didn't even mention Fossil Excavator is another reprint in here for, again, some reason. It might come in handy with Majestic Dawn, whatever, on format much later. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We have the strongest supporter card ever printed in this set, Mom's Kindness. God, this artwork is nice, but holy crap, the, the actual card. How far we have fallen to have a vanilla draw 2 being a supporter option. Just, oh good lord, I just don't know what they were thinking. We already have 2 different draw 2s with upsides in the format in the admittedly rotating Island Hermit, but we have Team Galactic Mars, which is draw 2 and put a card from the opponent's hand on the bottom of the deck. Why did we ever need this? We never needed this. Bill gets this treatment later on as well, and it's just as sad. In terms of new trainers, there are only 4 actually, because Old Amber's new as well. The fossils from Generation 1 do make a comeback in this set, so we have Old Amber as well as Dome and Helix fossils here. The Dome and Helix fossils are pretty good. If you attach their typed energy to them from hand, you can evolve them straight away. So this will let you go straight from Helix fossil to Omanite, or from Dome fossil to Kabuto. They do specifically have to be the Omanite and Kabuto from this set though, because they specifically evolve from Dome and Helix fossil. The Power Keepers ones evolve from Mysterious fossil, which does not count. Luckily these two are pretty good, as we'll go over later on, so it's fine. And then the Old Amber, irritatingly, is not a fossil card, which means that Fossil Excavator does not work with this thing. It is really, really stupid, because this card would actually be so good. The Aerodactyl is really nice, but Old Amber is not a thing. It's not a fossil, so you can't use it with all the support that we have that way. We've got one trick around that will probably show midweek at least. For this exact set, but it rotates because it's Hold on Phantoms. Anyway, the Amber itself prevents any damage done to it whilst it is on the bench, which is pretty good. So this is abusable with a card in this set we'll go over later, the Zapdos, because you actually damage your own stuff with that. But it means if you're using like earthquakes and things, you don't get damaged. If the opponent's doing spread-based things, you know, like snipe 20 everywhere or something, they can't damage the Amber, so that's really solid. So yeah, now we can go over the level X's. There are 2 which are level X's from the previous sets, so let's go over them first. Garchomp is the one you're more likely to see. Sami Sakum did very well with this at, I think it was Nationals. He got like 2nd or something, which was really good. It is obviously a level up from the Garchomp, so it's a stage 2 level, so effectively a stage 3 Pokemon style here, which is obviously incredibly slow, but it makes up for that with its effects here. Still no retreat cost, which is good. Only 10 extra HP, which is a little bit of a shame. But Dragon Pulse, when you level up into this thing, flip 3 coins for each heads, put a damage counter on each of the opponent's bench Pokemon. So very good spread setup there. And then for 0 energy, which is what makes this interesting, Restore puts any non-level X Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench as a basic Pokemon, and then you search your discard for up to 3 basic energy, attach them to that Pokemon. There's a lot of potential ways you could tech a deck with this. You could just get a Dustoir in the discard pile with Felicities or something, or TV Reporter, then restore it back onto the bench, and now you have a Dustoir that you can use for whatever you want. You can get Claydolls back with this, if one's being KO'd by snipe damage and such. You can obviously get more Garchomp back, recover the energy on them too, and keep your attack going. That's what Sami mostly did. There's a lot of really cool applications you could do with this. You could even use this to get the fossils in play. Like Aerodactyl is really annoying to get in play normally, but if you've discarded it, you could use Restore and get it back. The problem is getting time to do this, but it's a 0 energy attack. If you can get this set up, it's really not that hard to do. It's just very slow to get to Garchomp level X in the first place, so it's awkward. Porygon Z level X. Unfortunately, the Porygon Z is still not amazing. I've been testing it a little bit and it's just like aggressively mediocre. I don't really know what you do with this thing is the problem. Like, what do you pair with it? Porygon Z, for the record, was the conversion thing, so it let you discard a basic energy and change your type to that for the turn, but Tri-Attack was a very flippy based attack, so it was a bit awkward even when hitting for weakness. Garchomp generally does that job better, but Porygon has got inbuilt consistency. The Porygon 2 discards a supporter for its effect and lets you use it as, as an extra supporter basically. So there's a lot of inbuilt consistency within the engine, and Porygon Z Level X is just a buff power thing for that. So Mode Crash lets you discard all of the opponent's special energy when you level up into it, which is insane, and Decode lets you effectively double, what was it called? Smooth Over. It lets you double Makago from way back in the day. You just cheat 2 cards from your deck on top of your deck. Absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. This works really well with Claydol, because Claydol, then you just put 2 cards down, from your hand. You draw the 2 that you've stacked to the top of the deck. So there's like so much inbuilt consistency within this. Just what do you do with it? Because it's a lot of Pokemon space to get it up. So like, what do you do afterwards? I don't know. But there's got to be something for it. It just seems so cool. We'll talk about these two as we talk about the actual Glaceon Leafeon here. So let's just go through the cards in the set. Rough order here. We have the legendary bird starting with Articuno. Freezing Screech, like I said, it's the same one as the legendary Articuno from the Game Boy games. Even got the same 100 HP too. When you bench the Articuno, you flip to paralyze the opponent's active. So there will be some decks that you can really take advantage of that. And then Blizzard to Water and Colorless does 60. All of the legendary birds have got 2 type energy plus colorless as their attack costs. This one is 60. If you flip heads, it's 10 to all of the opponent's bench. If you flip tails, it's 10 to all of your bench. A little bit unfortunate on the side effect there, but it's passable. You could maybe justify this in a couple of different decks, but honestly, I don't know. I don't particularly think the damage output is high enough to make it work, but it's fine. Cresselia, it's arguable whether you would even want to use this one. It's got 70 HP instead of 80, which is a bit of a shame, but Future Sight is a really, really good opening. So, like, look at the top 5 of either player's deck and return them in any order. That's an amazing attack, and there are definitely a lot of decks that would want that. I don't know if you can justify playing this one instead of the Lunadance Cresselia though, just because that one's got more HP, and also Lunadance can be very good in the right decks, like tanking with a big dude. So I don't know if you can play this one, but it's a good math fixer. No, not even math fixer. It's a good deck fixer at the start. So a start of a game, like if you do lead with it, so maybe you could do it. I don't know. If you're playing like a 1/1 or something, or if you don't play that many Psychic Energy and are mostly just playing Crest for the actual ability, the Full Moon Dance, maybe you could justify it. It's pretty good. Darkrai is also really good. It's just hard to fit in the deck because of the naming limitations. Because if you want the Sleep Hole Darkrai for the damage aspect that this would synergize with, how are you playing the level X and stuff as well? There's the same name thing really gets in the way here. Darkness Shade, it's got the same 80 HP too. It's a bit bulkier in retreat cost. It is a 2 instead of a 1, which is annoying. But Darkness Shade is super good. Just when you bench Darkrai, you just put the opponent to sleep. So naturally, again, this works with the Sleep Hole Darkrai, where you go 80 damage if the opponent is already sleeping for free energy. Dark Slumber is actually kind of nice in its own right. 1 dart for 10 damage, and at the end of the opponent's turn, they're asleep. So if they only have 1 coin toss before it comes back to your turn for the stuff there. But this Darkrai doesn't benefit quite as much from them being asleep. If for 40, 2 Dark Colors to do 40, and if they're asleep it heals 40 from itself, that's fine. But it doesn't do a lot of outright damage. I think that would have needed to have been 50 or maybe even 60 for its cost. It's a little bit too low input for that. So yeah, there's probably a way of doing it. Maybe you play like even just 1 of this, and play like 2 Sleep Hole Darkrai, 1 level X or something. There may be a way of doing it, but it's just the naming part makes it hard to play. Dialga and Palkia actually get a new card in this set, 100 HP, so even bigger than before, which is good. Time Shift is a really solid opening attack. 1 metal, draw until you have 6 in hand. Diamond Blast is expensive, but since you can't use Metal Flash turn after turn if you are attacking with Dialga, it's pretty solid. 2 metal, 2 colors to do 60, plus 20 if you flip heads, so then if on a coin toss it's the same as Metal Flash, but you can use it turn after turn. I should note the Adamant Orb on this as well. If you are hitting Metal Weakness, it does 20 extra damage, because why not? It's just like super overkill, right? Doesn't really do anything with that, but hey, it's there. It makes it feel better, and that's what counts. Glaceon. This is the Glaceon we're going to see used, but I do want to go over the other one real quick because it's got a little bit of extra HP. 90 HP instead of 80. Both of them are weak to metal because it's Ice type, that's what they do. Ice Shot for watercolors does 30, Snipe 10, which is pretty good. This respectable. You could justify playing this one. Icy Wind for water double colors does 60, and if heads, the opponent is asleep. That's annoying. If it was auto sleep, maybe you could justify it even further, but yeah, if you want some spread, Ice Shot is respectable. But this one is better despite having less HP, because for 1 water energy, it does Snow Cloak, which is it's an agility, and you'll see why that's important when we go over the level X. But 30 damage plus if heads, you make everything immune. Remember when the Rapidash in Jungle did this for like 2 fire and a colorless? How far things have come, right? Speed Slide is also really good because Glaceon gets shafted by things that resist water. Sometimes you do need this extra damage output. It's not 60 damage for water double colorless, but it's not affected by resistance, Pokepowers, Pokebodies, or any other effects. It's actually really good against a Leafeon specifically that we'll go over later. Glaceon level X only goes to 100 HP, so pretty frail for a stage 1 level X, but it's got 2 extremely useful traits here, and it doesn't double its weakness, which I suppose is a good thing. It means if you take like 40 or 50 damage, or even 60 from a metal type, you don't get one shot, which is kind of cool. But its main trait, and this is quite a big constant throughout all of the TCG, its main trait is Chilly Breath. As long as it's the active Pokemon, the opponent can't use any Pokepowers. This happens a ton with Glaceon going forward. Most of the like the chase card versions of Glaceon will make the opponent unable to do abilities whilst it's active. Usually it comes with pretty mediocre attacks. In this case, Avalanche is fine. 2 water and a colorless to do 70, and if you flip heads it does 20 to each of the opponent's bench Pokemon, so that's kinda good. I think the catch with this card is mostly that it's a stage 1 level X with only 100 HP. The Snow Cloak can help. You can still use the previous attacks, so sometimes you will just have an ability nullifying Pokemon that is just immune to everything for that turn. So War Point or die, basically. And that's really cool. And Avalanche is quite strong. If you can flip the heads on this thing, that's doing a lot of spread damage too. 70 is a good enough number to 2-shot most things in the format. So, like, it's not bad, but it's also not quite there. It's a little bit rough. There are some control decks, I think, was it top 8 or top 32? It might have been top 32 Worlds was a Glaceon lockdown deck, but it involves Absol and Sensation Crystal that we do not have access to because we banned them. Speaking of stuff that would like justify a ban if it was easier to play, Kabutops is really annoying. I'll go over the Kabuto first because it's actually pretty good. Once during your turn before you attack, you can flip a coin. If heads, you search for a Helix Fossil, Dome Fossil, or Old Amber and put it onto your bench. Shuffle the deck afterwards and blah 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 blah. So this actually is a way of searching the Amber too. So maybe there's an indirect that you could do if you play like Kabutops plus, you know, Aerodactyl. There could be a thing for that. And it would synergize a little bit too, because the Kabutops' chop up attack is expensive, right? 2 fighting and a colorless to do 70 is not amazing, but it also does 10 to each of the opponent's bench that has damage counters on them. This will synergize with the Aerodactyl later on, because if the opponent uses a Pokepower, you put damage on the Pokemon that used it. The real thing with this card though is kind of like Glaceon, but in a different way. If the Kabutops is your active Pokemon, the opponent can't play trainer cards. It is item lock on Fossil thing.
This is also not the only time that we're going to see this kind of effect either on fossils, but yeah, it's item lock, it's back. But it's also not at a very good time for item lock. There are items going around, quite a few of them in some decks, but I don't think this is strong enough to really justify that part. And also we have Claydol, which is ability lock, right? Not even, like, it doesn't get affected by this, but it also, like, reworks your hand so you can still draw and everything with it. I'm not really convinced this is amazing, but I might try and build it anyway just because it actually does have support, right? Because we do have the Carbutor that can help get more stuff out. We've got Fossil Excavator that can search for the Carbutops. We can recover it with that as well. We have the Helix and the Dome Fossil. Dome Fossil obviously is the one we need for this, but both of these let you accelerate your evolution stuff. So there's a consistent engine for it here, but I don't know if the payout is good enough. We'd have to see. Leafeon is the star of this set, in my opinion. The second Leafeon over here isn't too good. I mean, it's nice that it's got 1 retreat, but level X, spoilers, has got 2 retreats, so we don't really care about that. And its attacks are not as good. Spiral Drain, Grass Colors do 40, heal 1 from the Leafeon, that's not really enough. Leaf Blade for Grass Double Colors does 50, if heads you do 70. Whatever, this one's better, because it's got the same amount of HP, and Bind Down is for 1 grass, so that's another really solid trait for it. 30 and stop the opponent retreating next turn. Can be disruptive in the right situation, very strong. Leaf Guard is also not to be underestimated. If you're going to get a KO anyway, you should use this. Grass Double Colors to do 60, and during the next turn, Leafeon takes 20 less damage, which is good. Leafeon level X is insane, however. It goes up to 110 HP, slightly bulkier than the Glaceon. Energy Forcing, both of these things are really good. Energy Forcing lets you attach an energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon once per turn. That is any energy card, by the way, not just basic. So you can attach Double Rainbows, Scrambles, whatever the hell you want. Really, really strong. And Verdant Dance for Grass Colors does 30 plus 10 for every energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So the Evolution deck in particular plays a lot of Double Rainbow energies and stuff like that, which will increase the threshold of this quite a lot. So don't be surprised to see this do 3 figures in terms of damage. It is very, very strong, and it's useful for like a billion different decks. It's kind of insane. Manaphy, I think it's just a little bit too short because Fountain is just a bit too expensive here. For Aqua Skin though, when you attach a water from your hand to Manaphy, you heal 20 from it. That's kind of cool, but it doesn't have like a big payout attack for that really. Chase Up is on a coin toss, so it's bad, but if you do flip heads, you search for any card out of your deck, which I guess is kind of neat. And for 2 water energy, you do 30 damage and accelerate up to 2 basic waters from your hand to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like. The difficulty is getting the cards in the hand, and also it takes 2 water itself, so you've got to spend 2 of your attachments on the Manaphy in order to accelerate 2 attachments that you could have just placed elsewhere. It does do some damage, so it's a little bit better than the likes of Weavile in that aspect, but then Weavile can also get Special Darks out of the deck, so it's not really better. It's a very awkward card and I don't like it. Mewtwo is setting up for the level X that's coming in the next set, I believe, in Legends Awakened. It's basically an amalgamation of the first 2 Mewtwo's, really. Energy Absorption for 0 energy is exactly the same as the EX had, and it's exactly the same as the promo one had. Search your discard for up to 2 energy cards and attach them to Mewtwo, which is really solid. Recover is a little bit different from what it was before. 1 Psychic Energy, discard a Psychic and heal 60 from Mewtwo. Back in the day, the Recover attacks would heal like all damage, but it also took a little bit more energy. So, I don't know, it's a pretty good compromise. And then Cyburn, a vanilla 60 for 2 Psychic and Colorless. Yeah, this is in the waiting room for its level X, but it's still solid enough if you need to hit Psychic Weakness and you're playing Lake Boundary, so you could use this to deal with the Gallade and Gardevoir stuff. Solid enough. Moltres, very close to being good. I haven't managed to build the deck to be consistent enough yet.
I'm trying it with Leafeon because, of course, you'll see the synergy in a sec. So with Flame Charge, its power, when you bench the Moltres, you flip you flip one coin, and if heads, you get up to 3 fire. I misread this entirely. You flip a coin, and if heads, you get up to 3 fire energy from your discard and attach them to the Moltres. So, potentially, a lot of acceleration off of this thing. And then Scorching Wing, 2 fire and a colorless, does 100 damage on a basic. Worth noting. You do discard all the fire energy on Moltres, but Leafeon, of course, can Energy Force and just keep attaching. So, that's pretty solid. 100 damage is good output. It KOs like most stage 1s at the very least. So there's a good amount of stuff you can do with that. Palkia over here, I mean, you're probably never attacking with Palkia anyway, but just in case, it's got 10 extra HP compared to the old one, so you probably still play this anyway. It does have a higher retreat cost, but so does Palkia level X, so it probably doesn't matter. Zone Shift forces the opponent to switch for 1 water energy. And Pearl Blast for 2 water and 2 colors does 60, and if you return an energy from Palkia back to the hand, you also do the same to the opponent's active, which I don't think is really I've never liked that as an idea, to be honest. The whole like the Kindle style effect, discard an energy, discard 1 from the opponent. I've never really liked that. Blaine's Charmander is like the only exception because it was already a removal heavy format. It does also have the Lustrous Orb, so you would do 20 more damage to water weak Pokemon. But at that point, you're probably KOing them anyway with most of the stuff. It doesn't really matter. It's not super good. Fiona, actually good. For 1 color's energy, you may remember this attack from Jirachi. Search your deck for a card that evolves on one of your Pokemon. Put it on that Pokemon. Counts as evolution, but this time you don't put a damage counter on Fiona, which might actually be a bad thing sometimes, but I think it's mostly good. So, yeah, it's got 10 less HP than the Jirachi had before, but it's once again any deck that wants a lot of evolutions can just use this as its starter and just like search the stuff out. Going starting with this and going like Roseanne or Celio into Baltoy so you can get Claydol out with Evolution Wish is a huge consistency buff. So, yeah, very, very good card. Rotom, this is the good one. For 0 energy, search your discard for up to 2 basic energy, attach them to one of your Pokemon. So again, a really good, I wouldn't say starter, although if you're playing Felicity, maybe it could be. But it's a really good reload type thing. There's a fair few decks that will like to have this type of effect. Sammy played one in the Garchomp list that we've been looking at, and yeah, it's just I could see quite a lot of decks that play some heavy discard stuff actually want to use this. So yeah, it's like Soul Rock, but more generally applicable. So pretty good. Zapdos, for Sheet Lightning, when you bench it, it flips, and if you flip heads, you put 1 damage counter on each of the opponent's Pokemon, which is very, very strong. Actually, this could synergize quite well. If it wasn't for the energy cost, this would synergize quite well with the Kabutops, right? Because you just put damage on the stuff, and then you can go, haha, you know, now all of your Pokemon take damage from my Kabutops. Also really good with the likes of Absol EX, right? And a couple other cards we'll see as we go. Raging Thunder does 80 for 2 Lightning and Colorless, which again on a basic is really good. But the catch is that it also does 40 to one of your Pokemon, so that's tough. There's not a lot of big healing in this format, but if you play Old Amber, that doesn't take damage, so then it just becomes 80 for free. And again, Leafeon can pair pretty well with this, so good stuff there. Moving on, there's a lot of rares here. There's just so much to talk about. I know we've already been going for ages, but there's still a ton of rares here that are worth noting as well. Starting off with the Aerodactyl, if the opponent uses a Pokepower, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon, it is Shiftry EX, but as a restored fossil instead. The problem is just how do you get it out? Because Old Amber, again, is not fossil searchable, so it's tough. I think you can do it with the Kabutops stuff, but is it really going to be good enough for that? I don't know, maybe I'd have to see. But I think Kabutops is just its own thing, and it can't really afford to play Old Amber as well, unfortunately. Bronzong is one of the meta definers, alongside the next card we'll talk about too. Cursed Alloy is nuts. If it's the active Pokemon during any time between turns, you put 1 damage counter on each of the opponent's Pokemon that has Pokepowers on them. So all of the bench sitting Claydols, any stuff like Leafeon, Palkia level X, so many different cards will just get dumpstered by this body, which is really good. For no energy whatsoever, Pain Amplifier, again, remember when this was on like Sabrina's Gengar as a stage 2? Yeah, crazy, right? Put 1 damage counter on each of the opponent's Pokemon that already has damage counters on them. So, no energy is the key thing here. This works really, really well with a bunch of different spread-based decks, including Ampharos, and also Piplup, actually. So, yeah, solid stuff there. And then Coding is the actual damage attack. 1 Psychic, 2 Colorless does 60 and reduces damage by 20 next turn. Usually you'll play this with like Scramble Energy or something, but this is useful for picking off, again, Psychic Weak stuff. Most of the time you play this with Lake Boundaries, so it can be used against Gardevoir and Gallade decks. So yeah, lots of good stuff there. It also pairs very well with the Empoleon that we see here. This Empoleon will be playable and is arguably better than the previous one. Same amount of HP, same weakness, same retreat as before. 130 is a pretty good standard for this thing. Dual Splash for Water Colorless is the main attack here. Choose 2 of the opponent's Pokemon, do 30 to each of them. That's just really good. But it also has a good finishing attack too. Surf Together does 50 plus 10 for every bench Pokemon that you have, so caps out at 100. But for a Tails coin flip, you actually end up doing 10 damage to each of your bench as well. So that's why you don't see it as often, but this deck is like a big come from behind sort of thing. You're just dual splashing the opponent's board, doing a bunch of chip. It seems like it wouldn't work, but it's actually pretty annoying, to be honest. And then Surf Together is just a big finisher move, but you can also just use Bronzong at that point, because if you've been sniping the stuff around, then a lot of the opponent's Pokemon are going to have damage on them, and between Cursed Alloy and Pain Amplifier, you're just going to finish everything off. Or you can use the Omastar that we'll see later, or even Omastar from Power Keepers to devolve all of the opponent's Pokemon and go from there. The evolutions all get printed in the set, and Espeon and Umbreon are support cards for the Archetype. Sunlight Veil lets you give each of your evolution EVs, all of the Pokemon that have evolved from Eevee, 20 extra HP. So that gives Espeon 100 HP functionally, which is pretty solid. You can only use one of these, you can't stack them, but it means like Glaceon is 120, Leafeon is 130 when they're fully leveled up, which is really good. And Morning Sun's not to be underestimated either. Again, the Evolution deck is a late boundary deck, so this will do 120 to Psychic Weak Pokemon, 60 normally for Psychic Double Colorless, not the strongest. You also just move in energy if you want to from the Espeon to one of your bench, so energy preservation as well as getting a really big KO, so it's pretty good. Flareon, unfortunately, as per usual, doesn't see a ton of play, but it would be really good against other Leafeon decks, so definitely not something to ignore. Kindle is the main attack, fire double colorless, discard an energy on Flareon, and then discard one on the active. You're aiming to kill with this sort of thing, because again, it's a weakness fish, so discarding energy for this is just not very good, but I mean, it's there if you need it. Fire Fang is also quite nice for 1 energy, so maybe you can get some cheap hits with that too, not too bad. I don't think Hippowdon is amazing, but it does do 20 for 0 energy and gets a fighting energy out of discard onto itself, so that's kind of cool. Sand Impact is just a little bit too weak here as well though, it's too flippy. Fighting double colorless 50, and you flip for every fighting that's on the thing and do 20 extra for heads that you get. You might average 70 if you just do it for free energy, but that's not really very good to be honest, so yeah. Infernape is probably just a tiny bit weaker than the Infernape that we had before, but it's the legal one, so if we want to play the level X, we would have to play this right now. Mark Punch is 30 for 1, unlike Meteor Punch, it is just a straight 30. It also does 10 to 1 in the opponent's bench, so yeah, not too bad for any energy. And then Mega Bravo for 1 fire does 40, but you discard all the fire that's on Infernape and do 40 times the number of fire that you discarded. So this is functionally 10 damage less than Flare Blitz, but you can also stack it higher. So there's maybe some potential for like a Leafeon Infernape to be a deck. I think it's too clunky, but you know, Leafeon can make like almost everything better. So there's some potential, but I think it's just a bit too expensive really. Jolteon is a surprisingly strong attacker, to be honest. Thunderfang's not too amazing, but sometimes you'll want that paralysis flip. 20 damage plus for paralysis for a lightning energy is fine, but lightning strike is the really good bit here. 2 lightning colors to do 50, you may discard 2 energy from Jolteon, and if you do 90 instead. Basically the same as Lantern, actually, from Power Keepers and like... what was the original set? I don't remember. It was the 5th one in Ruby Sapphire. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank at the moment. So one had Desert Ruins in it. Yeah, it's the same attack as what that had, except that had to discard like all the lightning energy that was on it. This can discard 2 of any energy, which sometimes is beneficial, to be honest. Also, Zero Retreat naturally is really good for the Eevee deck. Hit's a good weakness because Empoleon is so strong, so you will probably see this played if a dedicated Eevee deck is showing up. Moving on to the Omastar. So the Omanite actually does a very similar thing to the Kabuto, except if you flip heads, it gets a fossil from your discard pile instead of the deck, which may or may not be better, depends on your drawing situation and whatnot. It's probably worse, but you know, it's still there. Omastar, when you evolve into it, just devolves all of the opponent's bench. It doesn't devolve the active, which is a key thing to note, but the bench is where you're spreading all the damage to, so yeah, it's pretty strong. Its own attack is not amazing. For Watercolorless, it does 40 and forces the opponent to switch. But considering you're doing a bunch of spread damage with Empoleon and whatnot, then this is actually a really solid ability to have. It's debatable whether you want to use this or the Power Keepers one though, because both of them can evolve from the Omanite from this set. And it's like, do you want the power, or do you want the attack that isn't affected by a Cessation Crystal and the likes? I think most of the time the attack is being chosen at the moment, but this is still very, very good and also doesn't force you to switch your Empoleon. So I think there's benefits to both, to be honest. Moving on here to the Scissor. I sort of teased this one earlier, but it's a sort of anti-meta pick here. Resistance to Psychic is actually kind of nice for the Gardevoir matchup, although Gallade kind of tears it apart anyway, but that's fine because it's only for 1 energy when it attacks. Special Blow does 30 for 1, but if the opponent has a special energy attached to them, it is 80 instead. 80 for 1 on a stage 1 Pokemon that can play Cessation Crystal is kind of nuts. And yeah, Scissor Electrode was a deck that was relatively strong because Electrode just one-shots the Empoleon. So it's a relatively powerful anti-meta pick. It's a little bit grounded in the sense that if the opponent just doesn't have a special energy on though, it only does 30 damage, which is kind of miserable. And you don't really want to go into X-Scissor. You can, but it's 50 for a Metal Double Colorless and only does 40 extra if you flip heads. So that's tough. But as an anti-meta card, Scissor is actually surprisingly good. And yeah, for 1 energy, can't really go wrong. Torterra is respectable here as well. Mostly it was actually the Diamond Pearl one that got played, but the Nationals top 4 deck that Pika gave me played 1 copy of this guy, and he's real good. Same 140 HP, same retreat cost, blah blah blah, but its attacks are a lot stronger than the other one. For 2 colorless energy, you do 60, and then 10 to each of your bench Pokemon. Don't worry, you will probably heal that off later with Leaf Storms on the other guy. And then 2 grass and 2 colors to do 100 damage with Frenzy Plant, but it can't use it next turn. That's okay, because you have the level X that you'll go into, and that can do Vigorous Dash instead. So you can chain attacks very well, and it's just super powerful. Consistent 100 every turn is really, really good. Toxicroak historically was attempted with the Scissor as like an anti-Guardy thing, but it was garbage. It didn't even do its job properly, so that's as much mention as it gets. Umbreon is really cool. It gives your Eevee evolutions no weakness and 0 retreat. No weakness is pretty big, and 0 retreat is very helpful for the Leafeon because it's a 2 energy retreat cost, right? Confuse Ray is really bad. We don't tend to go into it unless you like scramble energy or something. Dark Double Colorless 50 and Confusion. You can, it's just not very good, so you generally don't. But yeah, Moonlight Veil is amazing, so this is definitely a good support one to have around. Unknown P is actually worth noting, despite what you might think. Once during your turn before you attack, if it is on your bench, you may put a damage counter on one of your non-unknown Pokemon. Which doesn't sound very good, but there are a couple of cards that get enabled by having damage on them. The Morphin does 70 for 2 energy if it has it on, at least the Morphin from the previous set. The Gyarados was the big one that we played before that gets to use Magikarp's Flail and needs damage counters on it. This is a great way of doing that. And the Primeape from Great Encounters does 90 if it has any damage counters on it because of its own ability. So it actually has some synergy cards, and it's pretty alright. Vaporeon is the healer for the Evolution deck. For 1 water energy, you do 30 damage and remove 2 damage counters from each of your bench Pokemon. So this is trying to stave off some of the spread tech. It's fine. I don't know, like, it was played in the Seniors deck that did well at Nats and such, but I don't know. I mean, I think for our format, I think we'd rather have the Flareon because Leafeon is probably going to see some play. Hyper Whirlpool is pretty good though, like, if you can flip at least 1 heads. It's a flip until tails for each heads, discard an energy from the defending Pokemon. 60 damage is not a lot, but if you're able to discard at least 1 energy, potentially even more than that, you can really stunt the opponent with this. So yeah, it's fine. If you need water weakness for whatever reason, this is your guy. Otherwise, the main 2 cards to look at are Unknown Q, which is a miserable 30 HP, potentially Donkfest on this one, but it also has 0 retreat, and when it's on the bench, you can attach it as a Pokemon tool to one of your Pokemon, and that Pokemon pays 1 less to retreat. So that's pretty solid. Yeah, you'll see this as a one-off tech sometimes. And then we have the Chatot as well, which is the big format. I wouldn't even say format changer, but most decks will play one of this if they can afford it. For no energy, you shuffle your hand into your deck and draw cards equal to what the opponent has in their hand. Most of why this is good though is it's a basic with 0 retreat. You can just play this down immediately at the start of the turn. This is where we start seeing like the one-offs of a bunch of different lead Pokemon for stuff like this, which is really cool. Otherwise, just a couple of minor notables in here. Morphim, in theory, is a really funny meme deck. For one, you don't have resistance on like any of your Pokemon, which is kind of neat. So if the opponent, I don't think Grass is even resisted at the moment, so it's kind of pointless. But you know, whatever. For 1 Grass energy, it does 30 for each different type of Wormadam on the bench, which sounds like another Kricketune situation. But it's really not, because the Wormadams all evolve from specific Burmy, so you have to play like 8 different Burmies or something for this to do anything. Maybe even more. It's just terrible. Not really worth it. The Prevos for the starter Pokemon are pretty good here too. Grotle for 1 Grass does 20 and attaches a Grass from hand to one of your Pokemon, so that's pretty solid. The Prinplup has Ice Blade, so snipes 30 for Water Colors, which is good. And Washover is not terrible either. Water double colors to do 50 and 10 to 2 of the opponent's bench. So once again, going with the big spread stuff here, which is really solid. And then the Monferno was 30 plus Auto Burn. Debatable whether that's better than the previous one. I think Fire Dance is probably better overall. But yeah, still solid enough. Also want to give a shout out in terms of Prevos to the Eevee here. Call for Family lets you search your deck for as many Eevee as you like and bench them. So the Evolution deck always plays like 4 of them. And yeah, you'll definitely want that. So that's pretty good. I think that's about it from this set. Again, really long thing off it here, but there's just so much to go over. When you're going over these sets in detail, you're really just going to talk about everything that's actually good, right? Technically, this is also not awful, the Driftling here. Like, if you want a hit and run style thing, 1 Psychic, 20 Switch, you know, that's not bad. But I don't know if you'd actually play it. But still.
There's a couple of the starter Pokemon here as well also have berries on them. You may see this Piplup. I have seen one copy of it in a deck before. Personally, I prefer the 60 HP one still, but it's notable it can't get poisoned effectively, so that's kind of neat. Turtwig can't get confused, but it doesn't have any low-cost attacks, so it's pretty bad. And the Chimchar can't get paralyzed. So you might see this one because like it's kind of a toss-up between this and the previous one. I kind of like this one actually, so you may see it if we play Infernape. But really, that's about it. Did I even mention? Actually, I may not have even mentioned the big stadium out of this set, Dawn Stadium. Just in case I didn't, we'll mention it now. Whenever a player attaches an energy from their hand to their grass or water Pokemon, heal 10 and all special conditions from that Pokemon. It's very good with Leafeon. If you're just attaching to the Leafeon, you can heal a bunch and keep yourself out of range. Really nice. That's about it. A very, very strong set overall. There's a ton of good stuff in here to mention, and lots of experimentation. So the next thing that we're going to see is the I guess we might just see the next like battle thing, which will be this but with the bans in place as well, so we might see Gyarados because that one has been unhit with the Morphin deck because the Gyarados Morphin unknown thing is pretty cool. But we won't see like Magmortar or Empoleon from Diamond Pearl, Infernape from Diamond Pearl, blah blah blah. Gardevoir won't see play. And then we have 1 week of the full format where we can play whatever we want. And then in between those somewhere will be the rotation thing for what we have lost, because oh man, there's a lot to go over on the rotation thing here as well. It's Diamond Pearl on, and there are so many cards that we lose from the Gen 3 era that are going to drastically shake things up. So look forward to that, I suppose. So yeah, if you've watched this far, thank you very much. Hope you've found this interesting enough, and until next time, take care.